Welcome back to another deck profile, this time with Gallantmon, that I won locals with. This was the second last week of the BT14 meta. And my locals had a lot of Commandramon and Bloomlord being played, so I decided to give Gallantmon a shot because I thought that would be a good matchup, and it worked out well. So without further ado, here is the deck. For the eggs, I run a mix of the EX2 Digimon that lets you draw one when attacking, and the BT12 Digimon that gives you plus 1000 to your DP based deletion effects. This is very personal choice, you run whatever one you like. The plus 1000 came up several times. There seems to be a lot of stuff that is 7000 DP, and the plus 1000, you have two ways to get plus 1000 in this deck, and either one is very beneficial. But if you don't like it, just run for this one. So personal preference to what egg you like. For the rookies, we start off with 4 copies of the EX2 Gallantmon, the searcher of the deck. Is mandatory for it. Searches everything except for itself and grabs the Tamer, and it can delete 3000 or less. Which actually comes up a lot more in this meta than in previous OTK one stack formats. So for Gallantmon. Next we run 3 of the starter deck one. This is all this Gallantmon, just different arts, if anyone confused. The warp digivolving isn't as necessary because we have the Takato Tamer that does it anyways. But it's still nice to have as an option, and the draw 1 when you delete something is just extra draw power. So it's not a necessary 4 of anymore, I don't feel, but 3 is still solid. Next, for the Gallantmons, I run 3 copy of the newer BT12 Gallantmon. Its search effect only grabs the Tamer, but if you get multiple Tamers, you add all Decado to your hand, so it can grab multiple. However, I only use its on-play effect if I'm desperate for a Tamer and I have a lot of Digimon, because you will end up bottom decking whatever you need. The main reason I run it is actually just for the plus 2000, because our deck doesn't have a lot of ways to boost DP, and I don't want to die in security, and I also want to beat over opponents' level 6 Digimon if they're a problem, so you really want one source of plus 2000 in the deck. So 3 copies of the Gallantmon. Lastly, for the Gallantmons, running just 1 copy of the EX4 Gallantmon. If there's 20 or more total cards in both players' trash, it has Rush. This allows you to, obviously, you can play it and swing for game. It also lets you play this and use the Decado Tamer to go into a Gallantmon. And because this Digimon gains Rush, your Gallantmon will have Rush and Blitz for the turn. Depending on your playstyle, you could up this to 2. But I found 1 was enough for myself. But if you're more in a purple mill strategy, where you max out all the purple line, then this could be run at 2 to increase your consistency of actually seeing it. Lastly, for my level 3s, I run 2 copy of Digimon X Antibody. The popping at 3000 or less seems to come up a lot. Because the Gallantmon red deck, we have no kind of protection for our security. So popping rookies means that it kind of helps our security so they don't get the free checks. And it's a free draw on a Gallantmon. And obviously against Commandramon, there's a lot you can pop with it. Against Bloomlord, you pop most of the level 4s with it. So I found it to be a solid card. Also another way of a plus 1000 DP to our deletion effects. There are times where this isn't good because it will no longer be a Gallantmon, so you can't warp digivolve onto it. So some people don't like it. I feel like 1 or 2 copies is nice just for that little option for free draw and pop a rookie or champion in terms of Bloomlord. But up to your preference. I found 2 to be really helpful though. For the level 4s, we have 3 copies of the old starter deck Gallantmon. Yeah, the Herald was still great. The gaining 1 memory helps keep it your turn. And the 4 play cost means if you brick on rookies, you can play this for 4. And yeah, that comes up, you know. You might not have a better play to do, they might have a memory tamer anyways, so just paying 4 to play this works as well. This is an option to bump up to 4 if you like. The Groundmon I actually run at 4 is the BT12 Groundmon, that if you don't have Tocado in play, it lets you play one for free. I like to see this as soon as possible, so I can get my first Tocado out for free, rather than paying for it. The other reason I run it at 4 is this is my most consistent card in the deck for plus 2000 DP. Again, the difference between having no DP boost and having 1 plus 2000 makes a huge difference when it comes to surviving security and hitting over other level 12s. So I feel like this is actually, one of these two is almost really necessary for the stack. That's why I run it at 4. For my last level 4, 3 copies of Black Groundmon. This card really increases the consistency of the deck. The fact it helps you mill, which obviously works with a bunch of Gallantmon strategies. And it kind of like pseudo searches because you add back from trash. And it's on deletion adds back from trash. Fixes one of the problems of you milling your important pieces. Before this card came out, if you had both your Crimson modes in trash, you just weren't going into Crimson mode ever. But this solves a lot of problems that the deck had in terms of consistency and actually using the trash to your advantage, not just getting big numbers. But I run it just at 3 because I feel like these ones are more important to help your deck do what it needs to do, and this increases consistency. And I think 3 is enough to increase consistency. Moving on to for level 5s, we're going to start off with 4 copies of the BT12 War Grin. There's basically only 2 War Grinmons that you will run in the meta, and it's up to you if you want to run this one or the other one at 4 copies, or you could run both at 4 copies, but I don't. But yeah, this one's really good. It potentially lets you go into Gallantmon faster with its when digivolving effect. Although I find that I often always do delete something with 4000 or less, but that's still nice. The end of attack is why this card really shines. If you end your attack and they have no Digimon, you gain 2 memory. This gives you the memory you need to keep your turn, potentially do a Gallantmon X and Crimson mode play for game. And it comes up a lot, so definitely I love this at 4. The other War Grinmon is the EX3 War Grinmon. This is a really strong card because it potentially lets you play Gilmon or Tocado for free. Literally the only downside is that it's bad at the start of the game. It's not like the first level 5 you want to go into, because there might not be many cards in trash. Also, if you warp Digivolve, this one has no inheritable, so you like to see at least one of these in trash to actually have an inheritable to put under. It is personal preference though. If you want to lean heavily into the mill part, then you could bump this up to 4. But I found this to be always good, and this to be really good, except if it's the first level 5 you go into. It does depend on what your locals meta is like though. But 3 copies of that War Grin. My last level 5, 1 copy of War Grin X. Again, this is just really good against the decks that have wide boards. It potentially gains you 2 memory, and you delete Digimon whose total TB adds up to 6000 or less. Against Commandmon, you could pop a bunch of rookies potentially. Against Bloomlord, you could pop 2 level 4s potentially. Yeah, even Commandmon, with how wide a board they make and how all this stuff floats, Gallantmon's one of those decks that you can potentially out-delete their floating effects if you have like a full stack that does everything. And because this Black Groundmon can add this back from trash if it's ever milled, I find 1 copy nice just as a nice little option. For our level 6s, we have 4 copies of the BT12 Gallantmon. This is my favourite one by far. It can raid, so you can attack anything that's unsuspended. When digivolving and when attacking, you can delete something with 6000 or less, and if you don't, when attacking, you trash the top security. This card's just really consistent. You'll always be deleting stuff with this, And if you're not deleting stuff with this, you'll trash security. If you raid and, you know, board wipe them, then this gains you the 2 memory. These Gallantmon and the War Grinmon really just go hand in hand. And yeah, it's just, I like wiping the opponent's field and trashing security, because this means you don't have to hit security yourself. Again, without any DP boost, you're only 12, so there's a lot you can die to in security at 12k. So we want to boost or just trash security, so we don't have to worry about it at all. Run 1 copy of the new secret, the BT13 Gallantmon. This one isn't as good to digivolve into because it, you know, costs 5, not 4. Its effects are a little more niche, but it does come up. It still deletes 6,000 or less, but if it doesn't, deletes 13,000 or more. The big thing, this actually came up huge against Mastermon, because Mastermon's 13,000, so this can just wipe out multiple Mastermons. Yeah, but this is I mainly run it for the comeback potential. If you have no Digimon on field, you can play it for reduced play cost. The later the game is, you know, the more cards that will probably be in trash, so the cheaper you can play it. Yeah, it's just a really great comeback card. I've seen some people run it too, but I feel like 1's fine enough, and this is the most expensive Gallantmon. Well, not counting Crimson mode. So 1 just makes it a little bit more budget anyways. But yeah, this is really nice. I highly recommend at least 1 copy of this. Only downside is that, unlike the Gilmon, this only has Rush itself. It doesn't give the Digimon Rush. So if you go Gallantmon X won't be able to unsuspend and make a second swing. And if you go Crimson mode won't be able to attack with Rush. Only this itself gains Rush. That's important to note. Finally, for level 6s, 2 copies of Gallantmon X Antibody. This is the one that I don't really want to go up into unless it's on Gallantmon. You still delete something, but we don't run X Antibody in this deck, so you won't trash security. So I more consider this like something that powers up a level 6, rather than a level 6 itself. It's more like an emergency level 6 that I don't like going into off of a level 5. Therefore, I feel 2 copies is the maximum you should run. I've thought about cutting it down to 1, but then, you know, I'm worried about not seeing it often. But yeah, it's a really good card for what it does. Just delete the lowest DP, or if you don't delete anything, unsuspend. We really like the unsuspending. It works well with the BT12 War Grin Gallant this, just to try and wipe the field, unsuspend, go with that Crimson mode for a second blitz. And do a lot of damage. And this also trashes the card if it has Gallantmon in the stack. So, nice 2 of. Finally, last Digimon, 2 copies of the Crimson mode. Nothing much else to say. If you know anything about Gallantmon, you know Crimson mode is a must in the deck. No ifs and buts about it. I have tried it at 1 copy, because you will never really go into a second copy. I've never had a game where I'm like, I want to go into 2 Crimson modes. But in saying that, running it at 2 means I almost always saw Crimson mode when I needed to see it, whilst running 1 means it could be at the bottom of your deck, it could be in your security. It makes it a little bit too inconsistent. So I feel like 2's the sweet spot. Again, it's very searchable, so by the time you get to near the end game, where you want a Crimson mode for a game, you should be able to see a Crimson mode somewhere. That's the end of the Digimon. For Tamers, 4 copy of the EX2 Takado that gives Blitz and a memory if you delete something. This card's really good. The deck basically functions all around Blitz, and so you really need to see this card as soon as possible. Gallantmon's so much worse without this. You pretty much have to like Digivolve in the breeding area if you're not going with Blitz, just so you can attack and keep it your turn. Also, for each one you have out, when something's deleted you gain a memory, so you don't mind having multiple out anyways, even though you probably only need to Blitz with 1 thing per turn anyways. But yeah, I've tried it at 3. You can run it at 3 if you want to, but whenever you don't see it, you just hate it. So I feel like running 4 is the way to go. Last Tamer, 2 copies of the new BT12 Takato. He's the memory setter. and he lets you warp a Gillmon into a Gallantmon by putting Groundmon and more Groundmon from your trash under it. Fun fact, he also gives your stack plus 2000 for the turn if you warp this way, and that does come up. But yeah, because of this, we want, we want to make sure we have a Groundmon and more Groundmon in the trash, preferably ones with inheritables. Not much else to say. Great that the deck has the searchable memory tamer, and you could run this at 3 if you want to lean more into the warping, but I felt it wasn't really necessary, and just want 1 on the field just for the memory tamer and comeback potential. But yeah, it is optional. If you want to run 3 and 3, you can, but I found if I don't see this, the deck feels really slow, whilst if I don't see this one, the deck's survivable. So that's why I run 4 and 2. Lastly, we have the last 4 cards, and we just run 3 copies of Offense Training. It's really hard to fit in space with all the Digimon, but this increases consistency so much for the deck, it's crazy. It does conflict with the Warp Digivolving. You won't be able to use this effect to Digivolve for 2 less, and like Decado to Warp Digivolve, so that's unfortunate. But it's just really good at helping it keep your turn. Go from Groundmon up to Gallantmon in 1 turn with this and a Blitz. Yeah, just if you don't have this card or you only have 2 copies, you can replace it with Ren Memory Boost, but you will risk bottom decking Tamers. But yeah, this is really good. If you want even more searching, you can take out 1 copy of Gillmon X to bump this up to 4, or increase the next option by 1. But yeah, 3 copies, really good for consistency. For the very last card in the deck, 1 copy of Crimson Blaze. This card is nuts in the BT14 meta. I know the meta is about to end, but this is the deck profile from playing it in the BT14. Yeah, it's so good. Good against Commandramon, Bloomlord, Fenrilugamon. Those are the main ones, but it hits a bunch of other random stuff too. This insecurity saves your day. This in your hand can board wipe your opponent. And you can just absolutely pop off with the card. The only change I would make is I'd actually want to bump this up to 2 copies because of how good it is in the meta. I'm not sure what you take out. You could take out a Gillmon X potentially, just run the 12 rookies. Take out another card that you feel like could be reduced by 1. Your choice. But that's the only thing I would mainly change with the deck, is I didn't actually see this enough. And decks that single stack decks that this isn't good against, your Raid Gallantmon tends to hit those decks anyways. Anyways, that's all for the deck profile. Hope you enjoyed seeing it. Shout out to my friend Harry. This is actually his deck that I've been playing. I decided to play the deck because it helps him to play test when he's not at locals. And if I lose, I can blame him for the deck. If I win, give credit to myself for playing it. But yeah, shout out to Harry because these are all his cards. And yeah, that's all. Hope you all enjoyed. Feel free to comment any questions if you have any. Have a good time. I'm out.